Behind every Casio watch lies a story that not many people know. Today, you will discover the truth about Tadao Kashio, the visionary behind one of the world's most renowned technology brands. From revolutionizing the industry with the first digital watch, to the controversial associations with Al-Qaeda stemming from the use of Casio watches in terrorist bombings, Casio has left an undeniable mark on history. In the quiet village of Kuretamura in Kochi Prefecture, on November 26, 1917, a boy named Tadao Kashio was born. His arrival into the world coincided with a time of great upheaval and change in Japan. From an early age, Tadao's life was shaped by a series of events that not only tested his resilience, but also molded him into one of the country's future technological pioneers. In 1923, when Tadao was just 6 years old, the Great Kanto earthquake devastated Tokyo and Yokohama. This natural disaster forced the Kashio family to leave their home in Shikoku and relocate to Tokyo. At the age of 14, young Tadao began working as an apprentice lathe operator to support his family. This early experience sparked his interest in mechanics and innovation. Simultaneously, he continued his education at Waseda Workers' School, excelling academically and graduating from both junior and senior schools in 1923 and 1930, respectively. Tadao's school years in Tokyo were challenging, but he adapted, demonstrating the resilience that would later define him. During this period, the Kashio family grew with the arrival of new members who would later play pivotal roles in the brand's history. In 1925, Toshio Kashio was born in Kyobashiku, Tokyo, followed by Kazuo Kashio in 1929. These brothers, along with Tadao, would eventually join forces to establish one of Japan's most influential technology companies, Casio Computer Co. During the 1930s and 1940s, the world was plunged into the chaos of World War II. Among those affected was Tadao Kashio, a young man with a vision that transcended his time and circumstances. Due to health issues, Tadao was unable to serve in the military. However, he contributed to the war effort by manufacturing aviation parts in a workshop attached to the family home. This work was not only a form of service, but also an invaluable lesson in precision and mechanics, skills that would prove crucial in Tadao's future entrepreneurial ventures. In 1942, Toshio Kashio graduated from the School of Electrical Engineering, now known as the Tokyo University of Electrocommunications, and joined the Ministry of Communications, where he specialized in research on Morse code transmission. 1943 marked a pivotal year for Tadao Kashio. He married Shigi Noguchi. Together, they endured the hardships of war and the challenges of the post-war era, raising 3 daughters and a son in a country rebuilding from devastation. The end of the war did not bring immediate relief. American bombings had destroyed the Kashio family's home, halting their manufacturing operations. However, this adversity became a catalyst for Tadao to rethink his future. A symbol of this fresh start was the purchase of a milling machine, which Tadao transported over 200 miles. This machine not only enabled the family to restart their business under the new name Kashio Manufacturing, but also became a testament to their entrepreneurial spirit. In 1946, as post-war Japan embarked on a path to recovery, Tadao Kashio, along with his father Shigeru and brother Toshio, founded Kashio Seisakusho in Mitaka, Tokyo. Their first invention was the Yubiwa Pipe, a cigarette holder that allowed users to smoke a cigarette down to the very end without burning their fingers. This simple yet innovative product marked the company's first technological breakthrough. In 1949, a pivotal moment occurred. Toshio saw several imported calculators at the first trade exhibition in Ginza, Tokyo, which inspired the Casio brothers to reinvest their profits into developing their own calculators. By the early 1950s, all 4 Casio brothers were actively involved in the family business. Tadao managed administrative matters, Toshio led research and development, Kazuo was responsible for marketing and sales, and the youngest brother, Yukio, handled production. In 1954, the Casio brothers completed the creation of Japan's first electromechanical calculator. This device featured a 10-key numeric keypad, marking a true breakthrough in calculator design. In 1955, the brothers showcased their revolutionary solenoid-based calculator technology at the Bunchodo Corporation in Tokyo. This innovation made calculators quieter and more efficient, symbolizing a departure from the bulky, noisy designs of the past. However, in 1957, a serious incident occurred. During a demonstration of their calculator in Sapporo, the device had to be disassembled for air transportation, but ended up breaking. As a result, the brothers decided to abandon solenoids and transition to using relays instead. Relays are electrical switches that allow a low-voltage circuit to control a high-voltage circuit without direct contact between them. This change significantly simplified mass production. In June 1957, the company adopted a new name, Casio Computer Company. They launched the Model 14A, the first fully electric compact calculator. This marked a significant milestone in the development of consumer electronics. Operations that previously took around 10 seconds on other devices could now be completed in just 5 or 6 seconds. Additionally, the model featured only 10 numeric keys, serving as a prototype for modern calculators. In 1960, Tadao Kashio became the president of the company, succeeding his father, Shigeru. This marked the beginning of a new chapter in the company's history. Casio began exploring new technologies and became a pioneer in manufacturing quartz watches, both digital and analog. In 1965, the company initiated mass production of desktop calculators. By 1967, they had opened an office in Zurich to serve the European market, and later that same year expanded into the United States and Canadian markets. Quite remarkable persistence, wouldn't you agree? A major breakthrough came with the release of the Casio Mini in 1972. This was the first personal calculator model affordable for the average consumer. Within 10 months, 1 million units were sold. In 1974, the company introduced the Casiotron, one of the world's first quartz digital watches, with an automatic calendar that accounted for months and leap years. During the 1980s, the company ventured into the music industry, launching electronic keyboard instruments such as the Casiotone 201, which revolutionized the music world. In 1983, the world was introduced to the G-Shock, a durable and long-lasting watch that became a global phenomenon. It was designed by Casio engineer Kikuo Ibe, with the goal of creating an unbreakable watch. The concept of the G-Shock was based on 3 key principles: the ability to withstand a fall from 10 meters, water resistance up to 10 bars, and a 10-year battery life. To this day, G-Shock watches remain the most popular product in Casio's lineup. Athletes, especially divers, swimmers, and climbers, rely on these watches. They endure low temperatures, feature scratch-resistant mineral glass, display moon phases and tidal patterns, synchronize time via radio signals, and operate flawlessly for 5 to 10 years. Additional features include a stopwatch, alarm, timer, backlight, and date display. More than 200 prototypes were developed before the DW5000C model was launched in April 1983. The watch quickly earned a reputation as the toughest in the world. The G-Shock also offered digital watch functions such as a stopwatch, countdown timer, alarm, backlight, and the option to toggle between 12-hour and 24-hour formats. In 1989, Casio released the iconic F91W watch, which became one of the most affordable digital watches in the world. It cost less than $20. The watch featured functions such as a stopwatch, an alarm signal, an automatic calendar, and a backlight. Its battery lasted up to 7 years, and it boasted an accuracy of about 30 seconds per month. However, the F91W also became a subject of controversy. In the 1990s, it was associated with use in terrorist devices due to its durability and affordability. As is often the case, when someone creates a device to improve lives, others find a way to use it against human life. After nearly 3 decades at the helm of the company, Tadao Kashio passed leadership to his brother, Toshio. However, he remained an advisor and shared his expertise through various publications. The company continued to grow even after Tadao's passing in 1993, leaving behind a legacy of innovation and accessibility. Two brothers, one factory, and a feud that forever changed their destinies. But how did Adidas rise to the pinnacle of global sports? In this video, we'll uncover the fascinating story of a brand that began by producing military clothing and shoes from old tires. From the era of Nazism to Olympic records, from corporate rivalries to fashion revolutions, discover how Adidas sneakers transformed from a family business into a global empire that reshaped the history of sports. The idea for the Dassler family's venture into shoemaking was inspired by the First World War. In 1920, during a family meeting, they decided to start making shoes. This marked the beginning of a story that would eventually change the face of global sports. In the small town of Herzogenaurach, the Dasslers crafted orthopedic shoes for training war-disabled athletes returning from the front, as well as comfortable slippers for everyday use. Adolf Dassler, a calm and diligent worker, came up with the idea of making the upper part of the shoes from surplus military uniforms, while using old car tires for the soles. His older brother, Rudolf, who was more outgoing and an excellent salesman, handled the business side of things. On July 1st, 1924, the two brothers officially founded their company, calling it the Dassler Brothers Shoe Factory. Things were clearly going well for the two German brothers. Just a year after founding their factory, Adolf came up with the idea to create the first soccer cleats with studs. The studs themselves were crafted by two blacksmith brothers named Zelin. This soccer model, along with gymnastic slippers, became the core products of the Dassler factory. 2 years later, Adolf and Rudolf rented an entire building for their growing operation and hired as many as 25 employees. They were soon producing 100 pairs of shoes a day and eventually bought the building outright. In 1928, the brothers, together with a certain Josef Weitzer, improved the design of the studded cleats and secured a patent from the German Patent Office. That same year, the Summer Olympics were held in Amsterdam, where several athletes competed wearing Dassler shoes. Fame came knocking on the brothers' door. In 1929, the Dassler brothers improved their products, particularly their soccer cleats. They focused on refining the design, enhancing the quality of the studs, and adapting their shoes for professional sports. During this time, their footwear gained widespread use among soccer players, boosting the factory's popularity. 2 years later, Germany was hit by an economic crisis. However, this did not affect the Dassler brothers' operations. On the contrary, they began construction on the Villa, a 3-story building. Over time, the villa served not only as a home for their families, but also as a place to discuss business matters. The brothers and their families lived together in this house, which was conveniently located next to their factory. This made it easier to manage production and grow their business. However, living under one roof also led to many challenges for the families. Despite sharing a home, tensions between the two households began to surface. The kitchen was shared, and meals were prepared for both families, but their tastes and preferences often diverged. Rumor had it that there was even a silent competition over whose dining table looked more lavish. Meanwhile, the villa became a symbol of the rapid growth and success of the Gebrüder Dassler, Dassler Brothers, factory. By this time, the brothers' footwear was already well known among athletes. In 1932, sprinter Arthur Jonath took 3rd place in the 100-meter race, wearing Dassler shoes, of course. Fame entered the Dassler household and firmly established itself there. In 1936, Jesse Owens, also sporting Dassler shoes, set 5 world records and won 4 gold medals. The brothers struck gold as well, with factory sales soaring to over 400,000 marks. Just 2 years later, they opened another factory in their hometown. The outbreak of World War II in 1939 marked a turning point for the brothers and their business. Most private enterprises were forced to adapt to meet wartime demands, and the Dassler factory was no exception. Instead of producing athletic footwear, the factory shifted to making shoes for German soldiers. There were also attempts to manufacture components for anti-tank rocket launchers, but the equipment proved inadequate for such a conversion. Both brothers were drafted into the military, although the younger brother, Adolf, was soon recalled to produce training shoes for soldiers. Both brothers were members of the National Socialist Party, which was a common occurrence in Germany at the time. Although there are suggestions that their membership was purely formal, it left a lasting impact on the subsequent reputation of their brands. In 1945, the town where the Dasslers lived fell under the American zone of occupation. Rudolf was sent to a prisoner of war camp, while Adolf stayed behind and began supplying hockey skates to the United States. Quite an unexpected career twist, wouldn't you say? Initially, the Americans intended to demolish the factory, but Adolf managed to convince them that it was solely producing footwear. In exchange for the skates, the factory received surplus US military supplies, including tents, baseball gloves, and similar items. By the end of the occupation in 1946, the factory was in a dire state. Rudolf eventually returned home, and the brothers resumed their original craft, making shoes from leftover military materials. The 47 employees hired at the time were paid not in cash, but in firewood, yarn, and other essential goods. The tough times ultimately drove a permanent wedge between the Dassler brothers. After their father's death, their relationship completely unraveled. The exact cause of their falling out remains unclear. Some speculate it was due to differing views on Nazism. Others suggest Rudolf harbored resentment, believing Adolf could have secured his release from captivity but chose not to. It's also possible they simply couldn't divide their inheritance amicably. While the precise reason is unknown, the rift grew so severe that they decided to split the business. This marked the end of their collaboration, but the beginning of two legendary brands. Adolf stayed at the family home, known as the Villa, which was conveniently located near his new factory, the foundation of what would become Adidas. Indeed, Adolf established Adidas based on the old factory. The brothers agreed not to use their company's original name and divided the facilities. Adolf's firm was initially called Adas before evolving into Adidas, with Adi from his first name and Das from their last name. The iconic three stripes became Adidas's symbol. He simply added an extra stripe to the old logo. Adolf actively collaborated with athletes, particularly soccer teams, which helped the brand quickly rise to prominence in the sports world. Meanwhile, Rudolf named his share of the business Ruda, combining parts of his first and last names. However, he later rebranded it as Puma, which remains a major brand to this day. If you'd like a video detailing the growth of Rudolf's factory, feel free to let me know in the comments. After patenting an updated logo and name, Adolf created the first soccer cleats with removable rubber studs. The following year, he improved the footwear for playing soccer in adverse conditions, such as on snow or frozen ground. In 1952, Adidas began producing other items in addition to footwear. Initially, these included sports bags, followed by tracksuits made in collaboration with the owner of a textile factory. That same year, runner Emil Zatopek won 3 gold medals at the Olympic Games wearing Adidas shoes, marking a new milestone in the brand's evolution. 2 years later, the German national soccer team, outfitted in Adidas gear, won the World Cup. It was a sensation. Adolf's company signed a series of partnership agreements, solidifying its position in the global market. By 1961, Adidas had fully streamlined the production and distribution of textiles. 2 years later, the brand began manufacturing soccer balls. Shortly thereafter, Adidas introduced the world's first footwear with a molded polyurethane sole. In 1975, Adolf Dassler, with a remarkable legacy behind him, was named an honorary member of the American Sporting Goods Association. 3 years later, the legendary German passed away, and Adidas came under the leadership of his widow, Käthe Dassler. 4 years after that, she also passed away, leaving the company to their son, Horst Dassler. Horst carried on his father's legacy with distinction, even implementing improvements and reforms in the production process. However, tragedy struck again. 6 years later, Horst passed away, and ownership of Adidas fell to his sisters. The Dassler sisters quickly realized they couldn't manage Adidas on their own, so they sold 80% of the company's shares to Bernard Tapie, the owner of the French soccer club Olympique de Marseille. Under his leadership, the company declined, and Bernard eventually sold the controlling stake to Robert Louis Dreyfus. Louis Dreyfus shifted production to China and several other countries in East Asia. The strategy of using low-cost labor paid off, and Adidas once again became a strong competitor in the sports goods market. The brand also established its own network of flagship stores, achieving unprecedented sales growth in 1996. The company's upward trajectory has continued ever since.